The ones that are starting a new term.
I think this.
Just the ones that are starting a new term. So that would be myself and our two new board members, and Dr. Hurst is prepared for that, so I'll turn it over to Chris.
I'd like to say good evening. First of all, we'd like to ask the recently elected board directors to come forward, face the audience. That would be Tony Ashton, Jennifer Stevenson, Ken Johnson. So before we begin the oath of office, I would like to share just a little bit about each one of them. First of all, Tony Ashton. He works in our community as a financial planner. He's actively involved in this church and participates in various other community organizations. His other passion is the Jackson Ashton Foundation, which provides scholarship opportunities to deserving students in the Columbia Basin area. He believes we each have a duty to help our community's children fulfill their maximum potential. Mr. Ashton's main goal during his time on the board is to assure Othello students graduate prepared to become contributing citizens of society and have the skills necessary to be able to either continue on to college or immediately pursue a rewarding career. Next, we have Jennifer Stevenson. Ms. Stevenson is a mom of 4 children, all students in the Othello School District. She and her husband, Mike, have been active members of the Othello community for more than 12 years. Jen is the director of the Old Hotel Art Gallery, which is a local art gallery, also holds art classes. It's a visitor center and a historical location in Othello. She's been active in this and the Sandhill Crane Festival, the largest tourist event in Othello, for almost 3 years. She's also active in Cub Scouts, her church, and Relay for Life. Her passion is quilting, food, volunteering, and her children. Jen has been attending board meetings since before her oldest started kindergarten. Off and on, she's considered running for the board, but finally felt her voice would make a difference and be able to bring positive change. Her goals are to bring a different perspective to the board, encourage positive changes, and be a voice for our students. And then we also have Ken Johnson. Mr. Johnson is a general contractor and specializing in glazing. He and his wife, Heidi Johnson, own and operate Johnson's Glass right here in Othello. He's been a member of the community for nearly 50 years, having raised his family here along with his wife. While being a contributing member to the Othello community, he has served the Othello City Council for 14 years, 6 of which he was the mayor pro tem. Also, Adams County Development Council for 10 years and was a volunteer firefighter for 26 years. He's passionate about his family, the community, and the value of hard and honest work. His goal in joining the school board is to see students, administration, and the school district as a whole continue to reach their maximum potential for learning, leadership, and success in this ever-changing educational environment. He's up for the challenge of digging in and getting to work on the issues faced by our fast-growing community and how it affects the Othello School District. They will be joining current board members, Director Rob Simmons and Director Mike Garza. To the office which you have been elected, it's one of dignity and importance. In accepting this office, you undertake the responsibility which is not to be assumed lightly. For you are entrusted to ensure the organization's viability long after your term has expired. You are charged with the duties of seriously and resolutely furthering the objectives of this great organization, the Othello School District. With the policies as your guide, you must so ever be ready to exercise the functions of this office of which you are being entrusted. And at this time, I ask that you raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States and the Organic Act and the laws of the State of Washington, and that I will faithfully and impartially perform and discharge the duties of this office of Othello School District number 147 according to the law to the best of my ability. Thank you very much.
Come on up.
Okay, in accordance to our board policy governance, we'll move on to item B3, and we will open the floor for nominations. We'll start with president. So we'll start with a nomination for president of the school board for the 2018-19 or 2018, just a 1 year.
I'd like to nominate Rob Simmons as president.
Okay, we have a motion to nominate Director Rob Simmons as board president. We hear a second?
I will second that.
A second by Director Ken Johnson. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 4-0. We'll go to the vice president. But once we do all the elections, then we'll switch.
I move to approve, or to nominate, would you back up? Has to be a roll call vote.
That is correct. So we'll start with myself. Aye.
Aye. I'm assuming I can vote.
Aye.
Aye.
Well,
Individual
we're supposed to state
votes.
name. Sorry, Rob Simmons. Aye.
It's when each individual member
Oh, there
has
we
to
go.
vote individually.
State your name too.
Mike Garza, aye.
Ken Johnson, aye.
Jen Stevenson, aye.
Okay. So it's
We only do it once a year, so we forget.
still happens, and so now we'll open up a nomination for vice president.
I move to nominate Mike Garza as vice president.
A motion to nominate Mike Garza as vice president for 2018. We have a second.
Second.
Second by Jen Stevenson. And none of the rest of these have to be roll call votes. Is
All
that
of them, I
right?
believe,
Or they all
yes.
do? Just the vice president.
Any officers? So
Okay.
2 of them are not officers.
Yep. Gotcha. Okay. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll have a roll call vote. Tony Ashton, yay.
Rob Simmons, aye.
Mike Garza, aye.
Ken Johnson, aye.
Jen Stevenson, aye.
Okay, so it's unanimous. Mr. Mike Garza is vice president. And then we'll move on to election of president pro tem. And so for the new board members, president pro tem is the person that runs the meeting, the director that would run the meeting in the absence of the president and the vice president. So if neither the president or the vice president are at a meeting, then the president pro tem runs that meeting.
I move to nominate Tony Ashton as President Pro Tem.
A motion to nominate myself as President Pro Tem.
Second.
Second by Mike Garza. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll start a roll call at the other end. Director Stevenson.
Jen Stevenson, aye.
Ken Johnson, aye.
Mike Garza, aye.
Rob Simmons, aye.
Tony Ashton, aye. The next is we'll have election of legislative rep. We'll open it up for nominations.
Question though, can one of those officers be a legislative rep?
There is no rule that says they cannot, yeah.
Okay. What are all the positions? Let's go over that first. I'm sorry, I don't know
You're pretty
all
much
these.
looking at them.
That's it? That's the last one, right?
Legislative rep, WIA rep.
Okay,
And
and
then
then
we have a
is there
student board
the
me-
student mentor, is that?
Yes.
And that
elected?
one usually is June to June because that's when this new student rep comes on. So
Okay.
that one, I'm currently
Is it now?
presenting,
Right.
doing that, but usually, normally that would change in June,
Okay.
June or July.
Thank you.
I'd like to nominate Jen Stevenson as our legislative rep.
Okay, nomination for Jen Stevenson to be our legislative rep.
I will second
Do I have
that.
a Second, second by Director Rob Simmons. Any discussion? You have a full 2 weeks to learn that job, Jen.
She's been working on it. This will be easy.
I've seen you working there.
Right.
I don't think we need a roll call for this.
I don't believe so either. No further discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And the last one, I'll open up nominees for election of the WIA representative of the school board.
Well, it only seems logical.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to nominate Ken Johnson as the new WIAA representative.
I second.
Motion by Director Simmons to nominate Director Ken Johnson as the WIAA representative, seconded by Director Mike Garza. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. The past practice of the board, just so we get the seating down, is the president and vice president sit towards the front, and then the rest of us sit by director area. And so I know I'll be in Jen's seat. I'm not sure which director areas you guys are, but whichever one's the larger number stays in the next seat over.
So you're saying I go to Mike's? Is that what you're telling me? Because I'm director one?
Yes.
Okay. You need all your water bottles? You have like 3.
It's much more comfortable down here already.
Well, I would like to thank the board for their faith in me. I know typically it seems like the president doesn't give as much input as the rest of the board. Probably not going to happen. Sorry to tell you that with me as the president, but no, I do want to listen to your input, and I hope you all give input. And if, I'm sure you'll say really good things. I might not have to say much. So we're going to continue on to item B4, student representative report. You could have multiple reports if you want, I guess.
First of all, I'd just like to welcome Ken and Jen to the school board, and it'll be cool to sing alongside of you guys. So winter ball was super fun. I wasn't really a part of decorating or anything like that, but I did get to go, and it was very fun. The music was really good, which was kind of a first in a while. And at my school, we're doing a canned food drive. I know they're doing one at the high school as well, but ours is a competition between PFS classes, which is Prep for Success. It's kind of like Husky Futures, except different name. Basically the same thing. So I know my class is winning right now. We have like 150 cans at the moment, and the competition ends Wednesday. So if anybody would like to come by and drop some cans off, you're more than welcome to. And we're possibly going to do a food drive for the animal shelter because I know that they're running low on food supplies. But yeah, that's all I have.
So I have a question for you, Isabella. It was brought up by Caden recently that there's going to be an effort to set up some ways to meet with the students that aren't just at your schools, and for instance, the middle school, and then also at the elementary. Can you share anything with us about that?
We haven't really got to brainstorm ideas yet, but I know in the past we kind of thought about like taking a day out of each month to go to the different schools, just one day and go to all of the different schools, but that hasn't really been settled yet, and so we need to get together and kind of discuss more ways to how we're going to do that.
Great. One of the things that I think has been the biggest challenge for our student reps is finding a way to be a voice for all students.
Definitely.
And it is difficult. It's difficult to find the time. And
Yeah.
so when I heard that you guys were talking about doing that, I think it's great. And I think it speaks to the mentorship that you have this year.
Yeah.
All right, we'll move on to board member reports.
I take full credit for that.
So the first item on here is a legislative report, which my name's on. And I did not find any new state legislative things to speak about, but Jen may have some things to talk about.
Not this time.
All right. So we'll move on then to the item is the schedule board workshops for the bond. And I believe that came from my request at the last board meeting. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The more I've thought about that, and it's not necessarily for the bond. This would be really beyond the bond and talking about potential for capital finances later, whether it be the discussion we've had previously about an athletic complex and different ideas of how to fund that, and also talking about how the current M&O levy is going to be affected by this new state levy. As I've thought about it more, I just think that it's probably a discussion for the future, not necessarily now. I think maybe the best thing to do is just focus on one thing at a time, and probably the bond is the best thing to focus on. And since it looks like it was about the bond, it really isn't about the bond, the current bond that we adopted the resolution for. So I'm going to ask that we table that, but I would like to have those discussions maybe early spring, where the board could meet and start having workshops about that, at least one.
So you're saying you do not think that we need to have a public workshop for people to be able to come and ask questions about the bond before the election?
So
that what the intent was?
That's not what this was.
Okay.
I'm not saying anything that we can't do that. I'm just saying that my request and what it was about
Okay.
wasn't about the bond. It was about something beyond the bond, and I just think that probably timing-wise, I think we should table it.
Okay.
I don't want to confuse the current
I agree.
bond details and with more discussions about the future. I want to make sure we're focused.
I think that we do need to have a workshop for the public about the bond, but also open it to a multitude of other things. I've had quite a few other people say to me, oh, I didn't go to that meeting because I knew it was about the bond. I've already seen it twice. Or I've already seen it 3 times, and I want to have other things to talk about as well. So I do think that it would be beneficial, although I know that there's been a lot of going out into the public and talking about the bond and the details about that. Just the more opportunities for the public that maybe haven't been reached or that have had other questions since a presentation is beneficial. Even if we're only getting 20 people to show up, maybe that's 20 more people that didn't have information before.
In the past, we've done that as a public forum, and we didn't have very good attendance in it. But I wouldn't be against myself as a board member scheduling a public forum in January sometime where we could open it up to. It's always open to whoever wants to come comment when the board answers questions. Was the format we did in the past. I don't know if we've done one since Dr. Hurst has been superintendent.
Yeah, I think a forum, right, that's probably the better
An
word.
open forum. It wouldn't be a
Yes.
workshop, because
Right.
a workshop format's a little different, but but a forum itself, we've done them at different schools in the past. I don't know what the rest of the board. or
So we're just talking
president
about
feels
it,
that.
specifically an invite for anyone who would like to come and ask questions and get more information on the details of the bond.
Yes.
So what would the board think about maybe doing that at 6 o'clock on a night when we have a board meeting, and say from 6 to 7, we're going to do it right here in the boardroom and have an opportunity for people to ask questions? Is that?
That would work.
It would work for me.
That would work really good.
What would happen if we, obviously, people want to discuss for longer than that amount of time?
I would say, well, I don't know that is obvious to me just based on history, but I would
Right,
absolutely
right.
say that we have the opportunity then to say, you know what, there's a lot more questions, let's do another one.
Okay, so we would just do a second meeting at a later date instead
Yeah,
of,
or we could do
postponing
a
the
longer
meeting
meeting at a
or
different day
something.
too. I'm fine, I was just throwing
Okay.
that out as an
Right.
option.
right. And this is, instead of a cafetorium setting, this is a much more, intimate's not the right word. But this is a very formal space, too. I mean, if there was like a,
We've done them everywhere. We've done them
Right.
from the high school corridor to MMS to here to,
what about like a library or something where,
we have never done them at the public library. We've done them at the school libraries before.
I was thinking, a public library, at a very neutral location. Maybe, I was thinking more of a school library as opposed to a public library, but we could always try the public library.
How does the rest of the board feel about that? I mean, what are your feelings in general?
All we have to go on, unfortunately, are, I guess, previous community forums have never had the bond as the subject, and being so close to it, I agree with Jen's idea about getting, or letting people come and ask questions.
This one might attract some people. The last, quite frankly, the last community forum that I remember attracting a large crowd was district boundaries. And that was a long time ago. It was always obviously something that people were passionate about. I'm pretty sure there was pretty full house at that one at Desert Oasis. But
Mm-hmm.
I was gonna suggest, instead of a library, maybe at auditorium there at Desert Oasis. I think that's like, I don't think it's as, not that this place is threatening or anything, but like Jen says, maybe people wouldn't feel as comfortable. I think it's neutral enough if we did it at Desert Oasis and had this meeting there.
the only note would be is we either have to put out notice and have our meeting there and change the meeting location, or we'd have to end it at 6:45 so that the board could be back here by 7. And it escapes me. I think we're enough time ahead that we can put out enough notice to change it to a special meeting from
Well,
a regular meeting. But
Does the board feel that it needs to be a separate meeting with more time?
I think it could become a hot topic for those that want to make it a hot topic, or have more questions and haven't felt like they've been heard. I would almost say its own separate meeting, not prior to a board meeting.
What's the
in
general
the past,
consensus?
we've limited questions to a 3-minute question, and then the board answers. So
I think
just so
prior
you
to the meeting would
understand
be sufficient, and if there's more interest, a second meeting.
Okay, what do you think, Ken?
No, I agree, before a meeting would be good. The only thing for timing, I would suggest having it really close to the same time that the ballots are mailed out to the public, because as soon as the public gets those ballots, they're gonna start to have the questions and stuff.
January
Refresh on
8th is
the
our first board meeting in January.
Then the 22nd would be the second board meeting?
Yeah, and the
Ballots go
are
out.
like the 15th.
Isn't
or
it 6
something like
weeks
that,
before and it's on the 13th?
in February. It's right around, it's either the 8th or sometime the beginning of the next week is when ballots are mailed out.
Well, if we end up needing to make a second meeting, then if we do the 26th, there's just definitely not enough time.
The 22nd.
It sounds like that first meeting in January would be a good time. Tony, what's your feeling on
I'm-
before a meeting or by itself?
I personally, I would welcome that we have enough demand that we can always schedule another one. But I think it would be great to see what happens, and if we have so much interest that we want to do another one, then we'll do another one.
Okay, so it sounds like 6 o'clock the first board meeting in January, and then we also relocate our board meeting for that evening. And then we're talking about the Desert Oasis gym and cafeteria.
Yeah. Okay. I'm good with that. So we just need to make sure we get it, the president will take care of that. I guess you'll need to read our rules and see what has to be done to change it to a special meeting.
Okay.
And then, just want to remind everybody, it's not on our current board calendar has another meeting in January. Mr. President, I'm not sure if you know by board policy when it is, but we have another community meeting in January at some point, I know.
All right, I'm gonna look it up right now.
On the calendar, it has the 16th, Tuesday the 16th.
I know what the Tuesday. So that's probably be right with the PTA members, is that what it is?
I just remember inputting everything from that calendar into my personal
Yeah, it's
calendar.
on
I
our
don't know
policy
details.
governance, GP 8.1. Tuesday, December 12th. No, that's tomorrow.
That's the next one.
Wrong one, January.
Tuesday, January 16th, that meeting with PTA. So, okay. I would say that we could potentially, change my mind on that, but yeah, so that would be the week after we're talking about with this meeting, right?
Yeah, just the PTA one meeting with the PTA would be the week after the forum.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure that the board members had it on their calendar.
And what is the purpose of that one? I mean, I've been
Linkage.
to one of those before. Linkage, just linkage in general.
You know, just, I'm sure that we'll have the board president, I don't know, I guess the board president will tell us what he's going to present on. We'll have a presentation by somebody, has been the format in the past, and then
Right.
Open for any questions the PTA has for
Right.
the board about governance policies.
Yeah, I mean, I would say it's gonna be very similar to what the meeting will be tomorrow night. Just a different group that we're
Okay.
specifically trying to link with.
All right. Because I have been invited to that PTA meeting in the past, and my last frustration was it was all about a bond or a levy or something, and that was the entire discussion, and we all wanted to talk about other things too. So whatever the decision is about that meeting is it needs to be, here's what we'd like to specifically talk to you about, but we're open to anything you want to tell us, any frustrations, any excitement, any whatevers.
Yeah, that is the way that we pattern those. We first give some information about some things that are going on in the district. If there's anything we want to talk about and information we want to share, and then we open it up to whatever that group wants to speak about.
Okay.
We can't, it's hard to
I know you
control
can't,
who's going to
right.
speak and what
Oh, yeah.
what the
Right.
topic is going to be. But yeah, that is our intent.
But to be very clear
we've
to
done
them,
linkage.
letting them know, that's all. Okay.
Yep,
Perfect.
absolutely.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other discussion on that, or are we ready to move on? Okay. So the next item is just feedback on our McFarland visit last Tuesday. We had the opportunity to go and visit McFarland Middle School, meet with staff, meet with community members, meet with students, and then also walk and visit the classrooms as well. And so just wanted to see if the board had anything they wanted to share about that visit. We'll start with you, Tony.
Yeah, I thought the meeting went well. It was well organized, and we had a great group of students. And it was good to have our student reps there as well. I liked that we focused more on, from my view, more on policy, looking at the ends, and the classrooms we visited, at least the ones I visited, you could definitely see ends 1 and 2 for sure happening at the school site. One of the classrooms I went to, they were doing an AVID activity, a team building activity that I thought was really really cool to watch the students doing that and working together. And they're always good, but I enjoyed the meeting and especially enjoyed this time visiting the classrooms.
And Ken, you were there, so you
Yes,
like to
I
share?
really enjoyed it. Like I said, it was a great group of kids. I mean, there was some great comments from the kids, and there were some good questions from them also, too. So I really enjoyed it. The classroom visits and stuff, I hope we didn't make the kids too nervous when we walked around and looked over their shoulders and watching them do the work and stuff, but it was really interesting to see what they were doing and stuff. Really enjoyed it.
I liked that there was many students and that there was a large cross-section of the other ones. The other two I had attended before, site visits before this one, was a very stacked group of students, and it seemed like it was very a single age, a single grade, as opposed to this group had all representation, and I even counted the number of students. There was 32 in the room. That was great. And just different things, seeing the challenges that the school and that age brings out, was good to have that reality and to know that's really what's happening in those kinds of discussions. And I specifically asked with my group, I wanted to watch the 6th grade hall during a change of classrooms, and there wasn't as many bodies as I was afraid of, but there was a lot more activity. Like the bodies didn't know what they were supposed to be doing, I guess.
That's 6th grade.
Right, it's not like, oh, we don't get that. This is the side you go this way, and this is the side you go this way. This is just bouncing down the hall. So, yes, that was interesting to see. So.
So you, Mike?
No, great visit. Kudos to Brooke and the entire staff. I like the transparency of it. We've mentioned about the meeting with the kids, and it was eye-opening to me anyway that there was 4 or 5 particular students that I'd like to go back and sit down and have one-on-ones with that seemed very intellectual. They were asking very pertinent questions, and they wanted to continue the discussion. I think had we stayed there another hour or so, they still would have had questions. Classroom visits were very interesting. The special ed class we visited, I gained a little more appreciation for the teachers we have in those classrooms, because those can be very challenging. And there was a particular student that, I don't know if that's normal, but I felt needed special attention, and I noticed that the EA that was in that room, I believe she was an EA, gave that student that time, and that was good to see that I could sense as someone that was there that this young man needed to be dealt with one-on-one, and she took the time to do it, which was good to see. And again, Brooke and her team, their openness with some of the challenges that they face. Congratulations on your achievements thus far. You guys have you have a lot of work there, and you guys are doing a great job. And the fact that you guys acknowledge that there's still some work to be done, and know that you have the support of the district as you expressed, and I just expect great things to continue to happen there. It was a great visit. Thank you.
So, I agree with everything that was said. The thing that I want to go back to, and I think Tony might have alluded to a little bit, was keeping things at a policy level. I did feel like what can happen, I think, the bigger the crowd, the easier it is to get operational, or the questions tend to be very operational. Did you guys feel that at all?
The
we
teacher,
did
at the
talk.
teacher portion.
The staff
We had
one,
already
the
said
staff
that.
one, I think specifically, and we've had it to where there's just department chairs that are represented, just certain grade levels that are represented, and then also where they're just kind of all staff is invited. And I want to kind of get a feeling. And I know you guys haven't necessarily, you might have, Jen, seen both ways, but what's the feeling of the board on that as far as in the future? I mean, as the president, I'm going to be working with Dr. Hurst on how we're going to pattern these visits and be specific about things. And one of the things that's nice about, in my opinion, about a department chair being there is hopefully they're getting input from their peers in that department and can bring concerns. But it might be a little easier to keep it at a policy level. I want to see what the board's thoughts are on that.
My personal feeling is that I think that these school visits are one of the few things left that we were doing before policy governance. Not that it's a good thing or a bad thing, but my personal view is that as a board, I think we need to go through the whole visit itself and each thing that we're doing, from my view, and say, why are we doing it? How does it fit in board policy? And start there and go from there to maybe some of the things we're doing we don't want to do anymore. Maybe we want to do them in a different way. But for me, I feel like the school visits are good, but we need to make sure we're tying them to policy, and I'm not sure we're doing that at this point, from my view. Like we're just doing them the way we decided to 5 or 6 years ago whenever we started doing it.
I think that's a great idea for the summer to discuss. Too late at this point, but for this year is what I mean. But
Why?
you've always talked about linkage, wanting to have better linkage. I think if you don't have all of the staff there, having the opportunity to say something, whether it is policy or operational, I think that you're walking further away from needing that linkage and wanting to have that input by everyone in the community and the staff.
So if you look at the definition of linkage in policy governance, though, it is always to get input, but input regarding policy, not about operations. Where a staff member should be able to feel comfortable saying, this board policy puts us in a situation where this happens and this is how it affects us. And then we can make changes based on policy. So I agree with you with the linkage part. I would just really more concerned about keeping it at a policy level. But and I would disagree that we can change it at any time, because we don't have the next agenda for our next visit. It gets done a couple weeks before the visit. So as a board, we can change it at any time.
Okay.
Add to it, take away, whatever. So maybe this is something that as a board we need to ourselves have a workshop or something like that to talk about how we want to go in the future.
Well, I agree with, I mean, and not to knock on it again, but it turned into chargers for Chromebooks, totally operational. And I think if the chairs are the ones that are representing their group at this meeting, I think it's still inclusive, because they'll all have the opportunity to contribute their ideas or their thoughts or their worries or whatever it is. So I don't think we'd be excluding them per se, other than they won't be physically at that meeting. But if administrators know beforehand, hey, at your next PLC or whatever, when you get together as a group, know that the board's coming, your concerns, you're going to be representing 6th grade, 7th grade, I don't know, or the subject, math, reading, whatever it is. I think they'd still all have an opportunity to give their input. I don't, maybe, Jen, maybe there is some truth to maybe us rethinking some people feeling not invited, or maybe we're not being as transparent as we should. But I think if they know that they have the ability or are able to tell their chair at their meeting, hey, you know what, at the board meeting, this is what, would you please ask about this? I think that's still their voice via a different conduit, but I think they're still there. And I think it would make our meetings to where they're focused on policies and things of that nature, which is what we're after.
And I guess kind of what I'm getting at is as a board, we set this format before we had linkage or any governance things. As a board, when we started doing this format, it wasn't for linkage. It was for different purposes at a different time. When we started meeting with teachers, it was really because we wanted the teachers to be able to have direct access to the board at the time, is my memory. And we had actually, in the beginning, had asked no administrators to be in the room, principals or the superintendent or anyone, and they just had a voice with the board, which has changed. And I guess that's what I'm getting at, is I think the board needs to sit down and say, we have a meeting with the teachers, why are we doing it? If it's for linkage, from my view, the whole discussion should be different. If it's actually for linkage, we should be asking different questions rather than how are things at your school? Because the linkage is more for bigger picture, community, talking about our ends, from my view.
What do you think, Ken?
I think it's still important to keep in front, kind of like Mike was saying, I almost have to echo you. It's important for the board to still let the teachers and staff and administrators there know that we got their backs. I mean, we're still here. We'll still listen. There's things that we can't do because of the policies, but we're still there to listen once in a while.
Isabella, have you had an opportunity to do any of the visits? Yeah. Okay. And do you have anything to add with the discussion we're having about how we have that pattern? Should bring the mic closer. I think, yeah. I think we're going to be hearing that they can't hear you.
I agree that we still need to let the teachers know that we're still like listening, and I think it's good for the board to hear like their other issues other than just like talking about the bond or whatever, and also for parents, all the questions that they had for you guys was always about the bond. It wasn't really about what was going on in the school. It was more just about the bond. And as a student, I would like to know that our parents are worried about like what our curriculum is or like other stuff like that. So just kind of getting the word out a little bit more. I don't know how you guys get the word out because I didn't know parents were like did a parent breakfast. I thought it was just certain parents. I didn't know it was open to all parents.
We've left that up to the school. Some of the schools have invited Pacific parents.
Yeah.
McFarland, they sent out a school messenger. And I think
About
made an
4
effort
times.
to get, but we've left up, in the past, the board's left that up to the schools to invite the parents.
Right. Yeah, and this is a board visit with the opportunity for linkage, as we talked about, and so it is important for, I think, the board to set our expectations in our agenda. And it sounds like we have some different opinions on this, so I think we should look to schedule a future workshop where we can really hash this out. And, you know, I look, my job as a president is to make sure that we're staying focused on policy governance as the discussions happen. And so it sounds like there's probably a lot more discussion we can have on this. Is this something that we want to try to have a meeting on right away, or do we want to put it off till beginning of the year? We've got a lot going on, and I don't think it's going to be a make or break if our next visit or two are under the previous format. Personally, if we want to wait till after the
Our next visit is the 1st of February. We don't have a visit in January because of the linkage that we had previously scheduled.
so would the desire to be to meet before that visit or after?
I think after that visit, because I would assume that they're already pre-thinking about what they're doing, and we don't want to make them scramble to change their whole plan, just in case they're already that forward-thinking. And then just before I forget, if we did end up going to just grade chairs or department chairs, we need to make sure that there's ample representation for parapros in there as well. I don't know if there's a para rep, but if a school has half certified and half classified, then we need to make sure that there's equal amounts of representation in that room, because sometimes paras have a totally different perspective than a teacher, and we need to make sure that that perspective is also seen, because sometimes they see things very differently.
Yep, great discussion.
Yeah. And we
Good
need,
workshop.
as a board, we need to set the agenda more. All those things, as even down to who the school invites to come to that teacher meeting, we've left it up to the schools. It's really not been that the board said, okay, this time we want grade chairs and this time we want all the staff. It's really been whoever the principal invites, and we've just been coming. We haven't been really that intentional. We've just said we're coming to visit. You guys set the schedule up to this point. Besides that, we know we're going to meet with parents, teachers, students, and classrooms. Yeah.
So my recommendation is that the first meeting in February, we would talk about, or maybe the last meeting in January, to give us all a little more of a heads up when we want to have a workshop to discuss that. How about the last weekend in January? Does that sound good to everyone? We'll add that to one of our discussion items.
For the 22nd?
Yeah.
Well, if we do end up having to do a second bond one, it would likely be at that 26th one. So I don't know if we, or
I'm
the
just talking about-
22nd.
That wouldn't be the board workshop. You're just saying
That's
for.
just-
We would have a
Have some
discussion about
discussion.
what the date to set for that.
Okay.
Yeah. Otherwise, if we wait right up to it, then everyone's going to say, no, I'm busy that night, no, I'm busy that night, and so.
Right.
We could add it to January 8th agenda as well, as far as I'm
Yeah.
concerned. That gives us a
What's,
month.
what's the board feel? It doesn't matter to me either.
Whatever.
No, anytime in January would be good. Any of the meetings.
We go with the earlier the better to get it on the
So
calendar.
my vote is all the earlier the better, because
Okay.
things get
So
lost.
January 8th, we'll have two board discussions, director discussions. Okay. So the next item is discussion on dignitary dinner. Tony, I might need your help knowing specifically what your thoughts were on that when you add that.
The dinner itself or the presentation?
No, what you wanted to talk about when you put that in the agenda.
Yeah, and so I asked Dr. Hurst to basically, he sent me the same slides that we went over with the teachers the other day when we met with, or the parents. Was it the parents that we went through that PowerPoint?
Yep.
I had him add a couple slides dealing with debt capacity, so that whoever's giving that presentation can discuss with those that are there the reason why we have to, even though we're passing the bond all at once, we have to build in a staged environment because of debt capacity. So there's some slides in there regarding that. And then there's also, after the bond presentation, there's the slides continue to talk about our ends policies, what they are and why we have them. And then I asked Dr. Hurst to basically give a state of where the district is in meeting those ends at this point. So that's where, it sounds long, but it's really not. I expect it to be 20 minutes before we open it up to any questions they have.
Okay, so I would,
So Chris could send you the PowerPoint if you want to give the presentation and study. I've looked at it a little bit. I could do it if you want me to.
I think what I'd rather, I'll open up and kind of explain to the people who are there the purpose of it, that we're going to take the first 20 minutes or so just to kind of share some things that are going on in the district, share some information about the bond, and then it will be open for any comments that they want to make. And then, but if you could do the presentations you've done at once, and you also are aware of those slides that have been added, I'd appreciate that.
Yeah. My only recommendation would be, if it's okay with you, to have Chris send the full board all the slides that we're going to be presenting, so that so everybody's kind of
I think that's a great
up
idea.
to speed with what's coming and what questions may come out of that.
Okay.
My question is, what is the dress? I've had many people say, what am I supposed to wear to this?
Clothing would be awesome.
Because that's what people ask women. What am I supposed to wear? I explained casual.
I haven't had that question once.
I'm sure you haven't.
I think casual is fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. I think
Maybe in the
the
future to
past?
put that on paper, on invitations, because that's what, yes, we always mention those things.
in the past it's been pretty laid back, casual, right? Okay.
I understand, Mr. President, the staff, somebody at the district asked us to invite our spouses, but that wasn't a board decision, or as the president,
I don't know.
Are you okay with
was
that?
was that a request?
But we did invite spouses.
Okay. My spouse has some things going on. She won't be able to be there. I don't know if anyone else.
I'm not sure if my wife's available or not, but she may be.
And how long are we, there's a Christmas concert at Hiawatha that same night, so I need to know, are we dividing and conquering? Are we trying to both hit both? So, any idea on how long this will be?
I would expect it'll last 2 hours.
6 to 8, I think, is it's scheduled for, right?
Okay, divide and conquer. Got it.
Okay. Any other discussions regarding the dignitary dinner? And are there any other board member discussions that maybe we've missed?
Just really quick, I would like to, I'm also involved with another group on the board for the community Christmas baskets. And I just would like to thank all the schools that helped out this year. All the schools have participated in gathering canned food, and McFarland Junior High, and raising money for toys and stuff. All this stuff really adds up, and it has really made a big difference with all the staff and all the help from the other school, from the schools that helped do this. And I just really want to thank you very much for doing this and your support to help raise this. It goes to very needy families. Right now, we're looking at about 350 families that this will all
Well, that's great.
support.
That's going to be distributed this Saturday, correct?
This Saturday.
And volunteers will be needed
Volunteers will be needed.
to come to the fire station?
Yep.
I've done that in the past. It's a rewarding experience to be involved in that.
Yes. And we've picked up from 2 of the schools already, the junior high and Hiawatha. And between those 2 schools, we've probably got 3 pickup loads full of food. And we've seen a bunch of food stacked up at the other schools, which we'll be picking up on Wednesday and Thursday.
That's great.
Awesome, good job, kid.
Can that remind me before you leave tonight, I have a question specifically about that for you, so if I forget, please
Okay.
grab me.
Can
Okay,
I mention one thing?
yes.
It goes back to the board visits. I know we had a really well diversified classes at the elementary school, but at the high school it was just ASB students. It wasn't, freshmen or, in my case, kids who are struggling. I guess it was more just top of the line ASB kids. It wasn't everybody. So, if you could just send out and not you guys, I guess, but Dr. Hurst, whoever puts it together, just make sure it's well diversified. It's not just single set of students.
Well, and hopefully when we have the workshop to go over our future there, you'll be able to take part in that and give us your
Cool.
feedback as well. Great. Anything else?
I just had one other item that I brought up before, but I want to make sure that we don't miss it. But at some point, I'd like to have a board discussion about, I think Facebook Live has been successful, but I'd like to have a discussion about options of simulcasting it onto other social media, and then also a discussion from the board about, no pressure. And then also a discussion from the board about comments that are made. If as a board we want the ability to have community members comment on Facebook Live, for example. As of now, my understanding is that nobody responds to those comments at all. And so I think at the very least we need to have a discussion as a board of if we're going to have comments, then I think we need to come up with some venue for the president or whoever the president decides to at least talk about the comments, or as long as they're appropriate. My worry is that if you open it up and say we're going to answer every question that's on Facebook Live, you'll get some really inappropriate comments, and
I have
just a worry. It hasn't happened so far, but we haven't opened it up like that.
Right. I have watched one on Facebook Live that an employee was responding to the questions, and an appropriate employee. And I thought that was fabulous, that the correct person that knew the correct answers was responding, and that was great.
I guess my issue
And that was
with-
on the someone was on the executive
I saw
committee.
that, but my issue with that is it's a board meeting, and unless
Right.
the board's responding to it, it's just somebody else's opinion sometimes. And as a board member, I'm not sure I want somebody else speaking for me as a board member and answering those questions. I don't remember what meeting that was, but I did
Right.
read them. I read them afterwards, but
So I would say this workshop, as we're talking about this, that we're looking to have for future school visits, really could just be a linkage workshop. And we could talk about different linkage opportunities. And maybe we even tie in the future based on our linkage committee and the work that was done there. Maybe we can just tie that all together in a linkage workshop.
yeah, that'd be good, because we really need to discuss that linkage committee as well.
So
Now that you bring
January
that up.
8th, we will come up with a date for that.
That'll be a long.
Yeah, it could be a long workshop. That's good. Anything else? Okay, so now we'll move on to item C1, required approvals. Before, I mean, it's appropriate to do a motion, do this after a motion, or even a second, or before. I'm going to go ahead and bring something up now, so it might make whoever makes a motion a little more clear. In regard to district operating policy 6212, now district operating policies, I'm not looking to change district operating policy because that's not the board's work. But this specific policy talks about things that it says the board will do that we have never done, and I don't see why we would do it because I do believe it's operational. So there was this paragraph entered by Dr. Hurst, and it looks like it was kind of a procedural recommendation there. Is that safe to say, Dr. Hurst, that
Yes,
that was
it
kind of
is.
a procedural recommendation?
Absolutely.
It's the first paragraph that I wanted to ask the board about. So it says the board authorizes the issuance of charge cards to officers and staff for district purchases, acquisitions, and authorized travel. So I'll stop there. First, I went to the RCW to find out, does the board need to authorize that? It does look like it is in Washington state law that the board has to authorize it. So I don't have a problem with the board authorizes is how that starts off. An officer on the board, I'm assuming is what this means, one of the directors, has never had a charge card in the 10 years I've been on the board, and I don't really see the purpose of a board member having a charge card. We've always had the opportunity to either be reimbursed or maybe Dr. Hurst is there at the same conference with us, and so like I said, it's never happened. To my knowledge, there's never been a board, someone on the board who has a charge card, but I don't know why we would ever need it. So I would like to see that maybe taken out. And then the other part, it says credit cards. No, that wasn't it. I guess I am going into the next.
Are you talking about where, I don't believe as a board member I've ever approved a credit limit for the
Yes,
district.
where is it? Oh, I
That's
missed
the
that one.
next
Oh,
statement.
yes. So the board will approve any contract for the issuance of credit cards, including the credit limit. And I've never done that in 10 years either, so I would say that whole sentence it's not something we're doing. I don't know why we would do it because it seems operational. And so I would like to see that not even in there, because I don't want to have to check every time we approve a credit limit for a new credit card for a staff member.
Well, my
personally.
questions were, what is the definition of a district office administrator? It says the district office administrators
Yeah, that would be,
Any directors,
Principals.
that'd be a director and
superintendent,
principals.
assistant superintendent.
so the executive staff.
No, we have directors that aren't on the executive, considered part of the executive staff. I mean, when I'm thinking of the executive staff as the ones that are up here now.
Okay.
Yes, that's
Okay.
absolutely right.
But all directors would be considered to be district office administrators, I believe. That's your
Okay.
interpretation of it.
Absolutely.
And then, again, this is one of those, whose definition is, who gets to be the approval of an authorized transaction? And that's one of those, again, an operating procedure thing that shouldn't be our realm, but it says specifically about they only have to be,
It says the superintendent's responsible for authorization in here and controls the
So
use.
I'll clarify my issue here. I only want to speak to where the board is mentioned.
right,
And so I think that the first sentence, yes, the board, we are authorizing that we issue credit cards, charge cards. That's the bottom line, right? I don't think we should issue, I would not be comfortable authorizing the issuance of credit cards to board members because I don't see the purpose. And I also am not interested in approving contracts or credit limits. So I would just like to see the two officers and struck out of this and the next sentence as well. The rest of it, to me, that's the superintendent's decision. We'll approve it, obviously, and I think as a board member, we have to look at this and say, is there anything in here we have a problem with?
Well, I guess
But-
my only comment would be is there's already other controls in place for spending limits and all those things that apply for everything, any kind of a PO. So a credit card would be no exception as far as my understanding, and so I don't even know why that even needs to be in there. For example,
Which one are you
certain
talking about,
purchases, well, there's already a policy in a different policy that says that purchases over 25,000 need board approval, things like that. People can only get reimbursed for certain things. You can't just go out and buy a doll at Toys R Us on your district credit card and expect to get it reimbursed. And so, I guess to me that setting a credit limit is just, unless it's a state law, I don't see the purpose of that.
I see where you're going, okay. So this, I think, have I been clear on what my issues are with this policy?
So are you saying that you want all of those portions struck and then to be able to reapprove it at a later date? Is that what you're saying?
There could be a motion to approve it now with those changes, but I would say, I just want to share my feelings on it and let Dr. Hurst then go back maybe and make a change too, because it is his district operating policy. This is where I'm uncomfortable as a board member approving it.
And
I don't know
just
what
to
the
be
rest of the
clear,
board
the
feels.
issues that you have with it are issues with a DOP that's already been approved in the past, because that's not a change.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of this until it came up. Yep. Oh, and I'm sure there's several more of them, because I don't pay attention to district operating policies unless they come across our desk for approval to changes. I really have kind of, my focus, well, I'll be honest, there was too many of them for me to keep track of before anyways, but my focus has switched to our policies, our board policies a long time ago.
I would prefer to just see it rewritten and come back as to try to approve it with exceptions from my personal, unless there's, going back to Dr. Hurst and the President, unless there's some immediate need to have that statement in red in there before the next board meeting.
I agree with Tony.
Ditto?
Getting nods
yeah,
from everyone?
I agree.
Okay. So then we'd be looking for a motion to approve the required approvals with the removal of that item then.
And then I assume Chris will find out the first line. I'm perfectly fine with taking the officer's statement off. The second line, I haven't done any research myself on that to find out what the law says, but if there's an RCW or some reason, maybe Chris can find out.
I checked it and I didn't find it. Yeah, I would say double check mine, but no, I don't believe that is a requirement. So
Okay, so
based on the RCWs I read, sorry.
I have questions also on the accounts payable stuff. If we're creating the budget on a yearly basis and saying, here's our numbers, go with these numbers, then why are we approving the details on a month-to-month basis unless they're over 25,000, like Tony had said?
State law.
State law.
We
That's
have
a
to approve
required.
all of those little details.
So everything that's in required approvals is just that. Things that we are required by law to approve, but really are not within policy governance for us to get involved in.
When I say the 25,000, this is money that's already been spent, and we're approving that it's been spent. If it's a capital projects over 25,000 need prior approval from the board.
It's
before
just
they can
capital
spend the
outlay.
money.
Okay. So this has already been spent, checks already written. Is that what you're telling
So I
me?
would say that we've
Checks are
already
written.
approved the spending in our budget.
Right.
We approved it, the budget. The check dates are the 12th, so they're
Tomorrow.
tomorrow.
Okay.
We're just required to approve what's in here by
Okay.
law.
So we approved the yearly budget, you guys did, that was pre-us.
The board did, yeah.
Right, in August? Is that right?
Yeah,
Was it before that?
it has to be approved
So
by
that was
end of
4
August.
months ago. I would like to see at a quarterly, since that was 4 months ago, but quarterly, where we're at in that budget.
Yeah, that's typically part of our information that we get, right? It's not every meeting, but we do get that information on where we're at for year to date. We used to. Brian, are you still providing that? Is that your plan to provide that to us as
We
well?
used to get it in the middle of December, actually, is when we used. the
Well, we
second
used to
board
get
meeting.
updates on where we were at in our budget throughout the year, multiple times.
Yes, I'm happy to provide an update at any time.
And Jen, are you asking for that to be kind of on a regular basis? Give
Yes.
someone where we're at year to
Yes.
date in our budget? And that was something, I think if you look back the way Gina did it, I don't know how frequently it was, Brian, but it was at intervals where it
But,
was.
yeah, I would like to see that quarterly. I mean, it's been 4 months, and I know that that was pre-you.
How does the
but-
rest of the board feel about that? That's something
I'm
must
fine
do.
with that. It was it was in there before.
Yeah.
We do have a policy, just to make sure that everybody understands. We have a board policy that says, let me find the actual policy. But basically, it says that if the superintendent's aware of any overspending of any kind, he should be letting the board know immediately. So I don't have any problem with looking at it quarterly, but I feel confident that if we were out of line in the budget, that Dr. Hurst would be telling us, because if not, when he goes to get that policy approved, it won't go very well. And it's an EL. Give me a second, I can tell you where it's at.
We also
Probably
have the
EL
ability to
9.
do any evaluation through direct inspection as well. So if the majority of the board is saying, yeah, we'd like to see that, is informational only, I think that if we were to start asking specific questions about it every time we saw it, then we'd be getting into operational. But if it's just for informational, where we're saying we are seeing that we're within budget and we're on the right track and nothing's out of the ordinary, then I would say that's still within policy governance, would be my opinion.
Yeah, so I'm okay with that, either. But EL 9, Section 1 and 2 address if the budget's off, the superintendent needs to let us know immediately.
Keep in mind, too, there's sometimes where there's large expenditures in one category at one time during the year.
Oh, right.
Which might make you say, oh, we're 90%, we spent
Well,
90%
I
of
imagine
that already.
buying
It's
all the
only
Chromebooks right
January.
at once, that kind of messes up
Yeah.
the whole, right, I understand that, definitely.
So I like numbers. I don't like looking at that, to be honest with you. But if you do, that great. Okay, so
I move to approve tonight's required approvals with the removal of District Operating Policy 6212 that will be rewritten and presented at a future meeting.
there's been a motion by Mike Garza to approve item C1 required approvals with removal of item C1-4. Is there a second?
Second,
Second by Director Stevenson. Any more discussion? All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to item C2. One of the things I think that was shared with Dr. Hurst, possibly at the last board meeting, but was how we would like to just make sure that when it comes to operational things that the superintendent's sharing with us, that it's really just there for informational purposes. If we have questions, it should always be tied back to policy, but it really is there for us to just get information, maybe about something we asked about specifically, and sometimes just information that Dr. Hurst feels that we should know about and wants to keep us updated. So with that being said, are there any questions for clarification in any of the superintendent comments, or can we move on?
I do have a question for clarification. DOP 6210P, I believe it's supposed to be 6212P, from what I could tell, but I just want to make sure that was correct.
It should be. We discussed that.
Yeah, I think it is the same exact policy as 6212, and so I think that would just for information, not for approval, and we'll probably see something different at our next board meeting, I would imagine, if there's any request for approval. Good catch, Tony.
I would like to see when we are getting multiple quotes. I know that they're coming in at different times, but, so we're comparing them side by side. I can't always go back to, I don't know when that was. When did we get that quote? I know there was another quote out there, to have them in all of the same document. At least when we're making a decision at that time.
Yeah, think
I
that's a
know
good
we're not
idea.
making a decision right now
Yeah.
about that
believe,
specific.
Yeah, I see what you're
I
saying.
believe, I was thinking, I guess he didn't put it in there. I was thinking they were both in there on that.
No, just
irrigation
Scone was in
quote.
this one.
Is there just the one in there, or, I was thinking you referenced both, so I just figured they were both in there.
They're not both included in here due to redundancy. They were, the quote was provided at the last meeting, and we determined that if we provided it again, we would run into complaints with redundancy. So the actual quote itself is not in there. However, a synopsis of it is. Again, nothing is being determined or approved. If it were to be approved, obviously.
Okay, so one thing that I would, when it comes to this specific item, one thing that I would like to know, and it kind of goes along with what Jen was saying, is really maybe when we're coming up on the end of the 45 days, okay, where are we at? How many bids do we have? And
That's all
when is-
in there.
when is the expectation, where are we at with 45 days? Sorry,
The 26th.
I read it and I didn't,
It's, I think it was added.
I didn't see those details.
From when I read it the first time.
oh, has it
It's
changed?
in there now.
Okay. There's another thing we need to be careful on is changing things last minute, because I read everything last night, and so,
Yeah, that is one
If it's in
question
there, it's in there now.
I had is, and probably for Chris, is I see it ends on December 26th. Do we need to have a special board meeting to award the bid before January 8th so that the farmer can get into the field? I don't know what work they would do between the 26th and the 8th, but I assume they're going to want to get on it because it's late in the year already. But
another question I have is, if we're sharing bids in public information, isn't that, if someone else wanted to bid, isn't that making that person who bid at a disadvantage, because now everyone knows what their bid was?
Dr. Miller, can you answer that question, please?
Yes, that is a valid concern. However, the bids that have been received to date were received via email. The board asked me what those bids were, and therefore it is no longer closed because I answered the board's question. The other option is to do a closed bid where we receive them contained and we open them all on the same day. However, that has not been how this process has been operating, specifically because the board has asked on numerous occasions, what bids have we received? We can do that moving forward. I do agree with Director Simmons' concerns. I would also mention that there's nothing that prevents anyone who has already submitted a bid from submitting an updated bid. But it is a very valid concern. But I believe that we should make those decisions ahead of time before we put the advertisement in the newspaper, simply so that we can move forward correctly in the future.
I agree. And I think I probably misunderstood the request of the board before. I thought the board was just asking how many bids we had gotten. I didn't know they were asking about details, so
yeah, in previous I will say in previous board meetings, we've talked about specific bids and prices in the past. So I think what Chris is saying is correct, that as we've gone along, we could have been, as a board, more, gave better direction if we wanted it to be a closed bid.
Gotcha.
But it sounds like it's okay to do it either way. It's just, maybe would have been more optimal the other way.
You know, I know it's kind of late in the process, but I could see where this potentially could cause a problem, especially for the current person that was on that. He's already made aware what his bid is, and like I said, somebody could come in and bid above that, but not much. It might be the possibility that the board has to reject all the bids and then go out with a sealed closed bid to make it fair and equal for anybody that wants to bid on that property.
Yeah, I guess from my view, it's, at this point, it's like a live auction that's extended. And
Yep.
so if a bidder really wants it, then they need to be calling the district office
To up
up
there.
until the 28th. And they're 26th, the end of the day. I assume that's the end of the day, the 26th. So if somebody's that interested and it's open, so they have the opportunity to call in at 4:30 and
So,
Right.
get a higher bid if they want to.
okay, that's what I wanted to make sure.
From my view, it's
If-
basically like you're sitting out in a Booker auction at this point.
and
And
just kind of bidding for the acreage right now. Okay, I
And,
could
uh,
understand that, and I could agree with that for this year.
yeah.
Okay.
I would
Any
also
other-
state that I believe if we were to redo the bid process, that would open another 45 days, and it would need to be 45 days from when we switched it. So that would push it out even further.
At this
into the
point,
new
if we
year.
had to go back to rebid, I would imagine we just wouldn't rent it out for the next year because it would be pushing too late for anybody
Really
to
late,
crop
yes.
in.
Any other questions for clarification on the superintendent comments? All right, we'll move on to item C3, the
Oh, I'm
McFarland.
sorry, one quick one on student comments, or on student participation in curriculum adoption. I'm not sure if it was here or somewhere else in one of, oh, it's under policy review, is the other issue.
There is a section in here about student participation.
Right, I think in the superintendent comments, he does say have student input, but under the policy review, or maybe I have it backwards. Under their policy review, one of them it has it and one of them it doesn't. Refers to specifically having student input. I don't know.
I guess from my view on that, my only statement would be is that we have a policy that, I don't believe it's in the policies tonight, but we have a policy that says the superintendent will seek input from community, staff, stakeholders. And the way I read this, the superintendent feels like a survey out to the students is sufficient for student participation, and if that's his interpretation, I guess I'm okay with that. It'll come down to when we approve the policy next. If the board disagrees that that's not sufficient, then we need to change the policy so that it's more clear, from my view.
It was on EL 14 that I had some questions on, so.
Okay.
Superintendent part was okay.
I had a similar reaction to you. The response was simply to a board question, so that was the response to that idea that was proposed by the board. But we did not suggest any amendment to the EL. That would be a task for the board to think through.
Okay.
But
Thank you.
I had a similar reaction. We're
Right.
saying it here, but it doesn't live here.
Right, okay.
Okay, now we will move on to item C3, the McFarland Middle School Annual Report.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Hi, my name is Miriam Ransom, and I'm the assistant principal at McFarland Middle School. I'm here with our principal, Brooke French, and the other assistant principal, Carlos Gonzalez. Now, I am proud to be here. I'm excited to be here representing the admin team at McFarland. We're all excited to be here. Me especially, because me being a member of this admin team means that I'm a part of the school district. And this is an exciting school district. I've only been here a few months, but I already feel so welcome here. And McFarland, the admin team is great because I know this because they've been including me in all aspects of the school. That's why I'm here today with them presenting this. And tonight, we're going to be presenting information that hopefully you'll learn more about McFarland. We're going to be presenting information about ELA and also math. Now, Carlos Gonzalez is in charge of ELA. I'm sorry, my mistake. I made a mistake. Okay. Carlos oversees math, and Brooke oversees ELA, and I oversee science. Now, I'm not saying science isn't important because, you all know that science involves everything. But tonight our focus is ELA and math. So there's going to be some things in here that we're going to present. I'm saying that the admin team, we know our challenges, but we are going to overcome those challenges, and that's why we work very well together as a team. So without further ado, I present to you Brooke French.
I feel like there should be some applause. Thank you, Miriam. All right. Do I get to be in charge of no? All right. Okay. So go ahead and click to the next slide. All right, so this is our vision statement, and I know you've looked at our slides before. This is something that was created with a leadership team in San Diego with AMLE, which is the Association of Middle Level education. And so we chose these words specifically from AMLE because we believe that this is what we want to attain to. So our vision is we value our McFarland Middle School students, staff, and families. We will provide an environment that is developmentally responsive, challenging, empowering, and equitable. And again, we chose those words very, very specifically. Our mission, this was one that we wrote, and then we rewrote, we wrote again, renewal and trust. Every day, it's up in my office in the conference room, renewal and trust, every day. I see that every single day, and that is our goal, renewal and trust. Next slide. So instructional priorities, reading comprehension, and math concepts and procedures. This definitely aligns with our OSD priorities for instruction, but with looking at our data with McFarland, it also is our priority as well. So the first one, we'd like to thank a student for this. All right. Okay. So we have our Smarter Balance assessment, and this is overall with ELA. And this, you'll notice that we connect this with the ends as we go through. But we have 6th grade MMS, and then we have the state, 7th grade, state, 8th grade MMS, and then 8th grade state. So this is a 3-year trend. And I want to show you here, right here with the blue. All right. So here we have 6th grade. Now they're going into 7th grade, so you see an increase there, and then moving into 8th grade. And so we have a dip right there. All right, can you see that dip? Okay, so we do acknowledge the dip, and we're going to talk about our next steps at the very end. So the next slide, please. All right, so this is the reading comprehension. This is not overall, this is just the reading comprehension. And this is a percentage right here. These are marked by percentages. So we have by our grade level teams. This is not by individual classes. This is all together. So 6th grade right here, you're going to see this is below. Right here is at or near, and then this is proficiency. Right? So here's our state right next to it. Same thing with 7th grade. And then 8th grade. This is this last year's data. Okay, next slide. All right. So let me explain the graph a little bit so it's not too confusing. Right here, the blue line, that's our students. Okay. Now, you kind of have to ignore the line right here. It's really pinpointing where they're at. So right now with our tier 2, we have 3 tiers in our school. So we have tier 1, which is our students that are above grade level. Our tier 2 is what we're looking at with our STAR 360 testing assessment. We see that here our students are able to move. Okay. Now tier 3 is students that are well below. But right here, we're able to see that our students are going to move. So right here, possible exiting at semester. Again, these are numbers. This is not percentage right here with our Tier 2 and STAR 360. These are numbers. So right here now we have about 110 for 6th grade in Tier 2 class. And we have about 18% or so that have possible exiting at semester. So this is exciting because this is a way for our students to exit and to move into Tier 1. Now we also have students that are exiting our Tier 3 from Read 180, that is one of our curriculums, and they will be moving into this Tier 2. So we have movement here. So again, this isn't the line going down, it's just pinpointing where our 8th grade students are, our 7th grade, and then our 6th grade. How many we have in a Tier 2, and how many are possibly exiting. Next slide. All right, we're going to move on to math.
Good evening. This is our 3-year trend data for math that we've collected over the 3 different grade levels. This is not cohort data, so it's not the same group of students moving through the 3 years. This is just by grade level. And so something that we're trying to do is just close this gap between our 6th grade middle school scores and the state. And we're wanting to do that. And we're doing that little by little as we progress. And so part of our goals include a 3-year plan for us to divide this gap into 3 years and just kind of setting benchmarks for ourselves to close that. You go to the next slide. Same here for concepts and procedures. When we're well below, this is what we're looking at in comparison to the state. And then the gap, you can see, closes a little bit more as we progress through the 3 years at the middle school. And I love this slide because it's showing where we're at. Part of our vision, if you remember in our statement, it talked about being developmentally responsive, and this is something that I think all schools are doing a much better job of, particularly because of our implementation and use of entry task quizzes that we're starting to use. And so up to this point of the year, we've been able to administer 7 different entry task quizzes. And with each quiz, it could measure how we're achieving anywhere from 2 standards up to 4. And so what you see here, that's a standard. And I know it looks like code, but that means number systems for 6th grade. Same here, 7th grade number systems, 8th grade expressions and equations. And so as you can see in this one standard, we're assessing it 3 different times at least to show some growth so far. So the way it's been set up is our kids are getting layered instruction so that we're conditioning them to see these problems over time, so that with the hope that they improve and are ready for the smarter balanced when it counts. Same for 7th grade here. And then what we have for equations and expressions on at least 6 different assessments. Does anyone have any questions on any of this data?
So what you're saying is on quiz, for the 8th grade, quiz 5, you retaught. It's basically the same concept, just being re-asked in different ways multiple times. Retaught, so big dip, improved.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in case you're wondering, as we were, like, what happened on quiz 5? And then I went back to look at when the date was that this administration, or when this quiz was administered. And I'm guessing here, I'm making an assumption. This was our fall conference date. So on that Thursday, we didn't have any school to conduct conferences. Well, on Friday when we conducted the quiz, it was a gorgeous day outside on a 2-hour late start on a Friday. And so that might have had something to do with that little dip, but again, just an assumption. Other than that, you can see the growth in our kids rebounding. And so the nice thing is right now with the quizzes that we've been able to receive is that this is a great example of how over the 7 that we've been able to take, not to mention the interim assessment we've had so far on number systems, the benchmark block, we have at least anywhere from 2 different quizzes to up to 5 to 6 different quizzes on one standard to show that the data that we're collecting being in 2 different ways, how we're doing overall through the different standards, but also how we're progressing in any one standard over time to see if our kids are getting better. And so I really appreciate what the district has done to prepare these entry task quizzes and give our kids the necessary materials to practice these concepts. Also with what they've been able to provide through the instructional frameworks and helping us to stay on track so that we're exposing our kids and conditioning them to this rigor at grade level so that they're ready when it counts. And so that's the hope. And so we're still growing and we're trying to improve as we move along.
I could provide one additional comment about something like Quiz 5 that you might see across the system. That standard 8 EEA1 could be asked in multiple ways. So perhaps the students were asked at a level on Quiz 2, 3 that was similar and then was presented in a more rigorous way. Now we have true evidence that they don't really totally have that standard. So you would expect instruction between 5, 6, and 7 that would get at that more rigorous option. So it's related to some of that too, just how the question is presented.
but also to contribute to this work is, earlier I talked about the instructional framework. Our district and the building is working much better to, I guess, best equip our teachers with the resources that they're going to need based on the adopted curriculum that we do have that's available, and to support this work that we're doing to grow and help our kids be ready.
So our last slide here, these are our next steps. We really like how Dr. Hurst has encouraged the words of current reality and next steps. And we saw our current reality. We can't change the current reality right now, but what we can do is look how to change it in the future. It is what it is right now. So our next steps, building relational trust. Now, how in the world is that going to help with our instruction for our students? That is the root of what will help. Okay, and so building relational trust, that goes back to our mission, renewal and trust. We do believe in that. Every day we work towards that. Continuous communication of current reality with data in grade levels and content area teams. Right now we have every Monday's a PLC, whether it's a district, a building, or a teacher. So teachers are able to meet in their content area, in their grade levels. They also have another meeting during their common planning time where they're able to talk about data in their grade levels and content area teams. Early warning system to predictive data. This is what we're working right now with our building with Justin Johnson, Director of Data, and we're looking at our past data, and we are trying to predict our future data. Embedded practice, adopted piloted curriculum. In the last just couple years, we've had adopted writing curriculum from Lucy Calkins. We just adopted Discovery Ed with math. We're looking at piloting science this year. So there's a lot of curriculum that has happened, and we're looking at, PD training, what we can do to help and support our staff with that curriculum. Consultants, we are open to our consultants. We have Janice Heigl with math, who is international. She travels everywhere to help and assist. We have Lisa Horn, who's just starting to come into our building and do classroom walkthroughs, and has been able to give honest, non-biased feedback towards what is going on in our ELA classrooms. Teaming and collaboration, again, our common planning time, our PLCs, consistent monitoring feedback. We've been working with creating a classroom walkthrough tool that we felt was appropriate to collect the data needed in order for us to look at how we can support our staff. And I think we finally figured out with the Google form. But we're working on 4 different areas. So we're working on school climate, so that every time we go into a classroom, we are able to gauge that and see how the school climate is just in that classroom. Engagement of students, that's another one. The objective, what is the objective of this lesson? And then is it targeting a standard? Those are the 4 things that we look for every time we go into a classroom. So our next steps, I think it's definitely doable. We work as a team. I'm very grateful for my team. They bring a lot of experience and talents to our building, and I'm grateful for our staff and our students because I know that they want change, and I know that we're getting there. Good things are happening at McFarland, and I invite all of you anytime to come and visit us. We'll take you through some real classroom walkthroughs again and again, and let you know what it's like to go through that 6th grade hallway one more time. So thank you very much.
Okay. Does the board have any questions for the McFarland administrative team?
I do. I have lots of questions. Sorry. So we had heard that the high school is taking some of your 8th graders a class at a time to do walkthroughs so that they're prepared or a little bit more comfortable with the concept of going to high school. Have you guys discussed doing that with 5th graders coming in as opposed to a 20, maybe 30-minute field trip? Doing like I know that's absolute, you're already at chaos. I don't know, has that been a discussion?
So we actually did talk about it with our staff at our building PLC this last Monday, a week ago. And one of that was we are having the fifth graders come in. I was actually able to, at Ludocaga last year, bring the fifth graders up to see that transition. But we talked about at the start of the year, next year, that we have a day at least where it's just sixth graders. And so they're able to come and to experience a whole day at the middle school without seventh and eighth graders. Now, this is something that's just an idea. I know that other middle schools and other districts do that. But there's a lot of other things we have to work out with that. So if sixth grade teachers come and start a day early, do they leave a day early at the end of the year? We have to communicate that with parents, transportation. So there's a lot that goes in there, the kitchen staff. But it's an idea that we're looking at because, I mean, they'll spend 2 weeks trying to figure out their lockers, and that is a huge stress for them until I come by with the key and then have them redo it again, but later. But so there are other things that we are looking at for our fifth graders because that's very hard for them to transition into a middle school. Asking sixth graders over and over, do you like middle school? The ones that I knew from Ludocaga, and they're like, yes. The lunch has more options. There's more to choose from. It's really big. So we have a lot of different opinions going back and forth from our students. But yes, anything to make it easier for them. Our counselors are great. We're definitely open for more ideas.
Any other questions?
I don't have a question, I have a statement. I really appreciate when these presentations come intentional to the board's ends and how you are, through Dr. Hurst, meeting the board's ends. I love to see presentations on our ends and especially showing progress in student growth and getting our kids to the end of the line with us anyway in a positive manner. So I appreciate the presentation and especially how you've tied it to the ends and shown how our kids are progressing.
Thank you.
I'll just comment along those lines. I know you showed non-cohort data, which is the way we've been trained to look at data for so long, and I know you guys look at it differently, but I did see that cohort data was showing growth. And so feel free to share that with us. We know that the state always is comparing 7th grade this year to 7th grade this year, 8th grade last year to 8th grade last year. But I saw the growth. I saw the stair step, and I think the newest information that was just shared with us, it was New York Times, correct, Dr. Hurst? That shows that our district shows considerable growth of students who are in our system from 3rd through 8th grade, more than a year, or more than one year's growth per year being in the system. That's really what matters in the end. So you guys are showing it, so good job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, my first day as president, I'm way behind, so hopefully we're going to catch up right now. So item D1, monitoring reports. This is an opportunity for us to essentially accept the monitoring reports that have been given to us on EL2 and EL3 by Dr. Hurst, and we will monitor those through our Survey Monkeys before the next.
I move to approve acceptance of item monitoring reports from item D1.
It's been a motion by Director Ashton to approve the acceptance of EL2 and EL3 monitoring reports.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Sure, yeah, I'm trying here. I'm trying to catch up. Okay, I'm going to move on. I'm sure you can do these manually. So on item D2, these are the monitoring response documents from the last board meeting. I'll accept a motion to approve the monitoring response documents with their comments.
I have a question on EL14 before we approve them. When you use the terminology, oh wait. Okay, so you've already approved these, so I don't understand why these are in. I guess that's where my question is there.
So what we're approving, so at the last board meeting, we went over the survey monkeys that each board member filled out. From that, we came up with a consensus of what the board felt, which goes into the monitoring document. And at the next meeting, we approve the monitoring document. So we have a chance to look at it and say, I don't remember us agreeing to that, or,
Okay.
yeah, that's what
We didn't
I
actually
believe
make
that's
a
what we talked
motion, we
about.
just gave consensus.
Okay, so then because Ken and I were not part of that, are Ken and I supposed to be voting on that?
It's a great question, because I was thinking the same thing.
If you disagree with the consensus that the board had at the time,
You were here, so I would
You're
say
right,
that
we
you
were
could
aware.
agree or disagree.
Okay,
if
that
you
was just my
disagree with the
question.
consensus, then, and you changed
Okay.
other board members' minds, then the report would need to be rewritten.
Okay, gotcha, thank you for that clarification.
So I'll accept a motion to approve.
Second.
I'll give
Yeah,
you a
take
motion.
those.
There wasn't a first, I don't think.
I thought Tony did.
Did Tony move to
No.
approve?
I'll give you a motion.
All right, so it sounds like we have Jen Stevenson move to approve all 4 monitoring response documents.
Second.
Second by Director Garza. Any further discussion?
Yes. If you pull up EL 17, for example, I just want to make a suggestion for the president that I believe the way these reports are supposed to be is when it's in compliance with an exception, the exception should be under item B, not under remarks. I'm okay with how this one is, but I think in the future to be a lot more clear if instead of anyway, I think there's a way you could do that without circling it like that and then putting the comments down under remarks. I think they should actually be under the exception section, so that not to be confused with EL 14, for example, the remarks were really positive and it was in compliance. It's just easier for the community to follow.
I'll make sure I look at that and when I'm filling this out. I would also like to say, I think it's important since this is the final document we're improving, that we make sure we have the superintendent's signature on them as well, first. Okay. Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We will move on to policy review. So just for our new board members, this is the opportunity then. So we've monitored the policy from the most recent monitoring report that was provided by Dr. Hurst, or for monitoring ourselves. And now we have an opportunity to review the policy if we want to make any changes to that policy, or if we want to just keep it as is. And so I'll just go through these one at a time
So
and
it's
ask.
always one section behind. So the ones we approved tonight will be in review at the next board meeting. The ones we approved the monitoring tonight. So these ones are ones we actually approved board meeting before.
They'll actually be 2 board meetings from now.
It'll go into review in the next meeting, the way the calendar is.
We don't do the surveys next meeting and then
For
review
ones
the
that
following?
No, the ones that we received the monitoring reports for, we do the surveys. The ones that we actually just approved the monitoring response documents will go into review at the next meetings. The one that we just barely approved. the
Well, that's
4
what,
of
they're
them.
in there right now. So are they in there too early? I thought we
Oh,
decided.
No, you're right, sorry.
So now,
Oh,
that was
you're
when
right.
we switched, Tony, to approving the
That's right, 'cause
monitoring
we changed
report
to
or
review.
documents separately.
Correct.
Yeah.
We were approving them during the board.
I think we
meeting.
sped it up one meeting
did.
or something, didn't we, when we did that?
Well, we were physically approving them in that board meeting before, is what we were doing
Okay.
different. You are right, sorry, I stand corrected.
Sorry, I can stand corrected a lot of times, too. So item E1, EL 14, is there any recommendations from the board for any changes to that policy? Okay, now move on to item E2, any recommended changes there?
Shoot, I've lost where I'm at. Okay, we're on E, right?
Yes.
We were on E E1.
We're on E2 now.
So 18 will open,
Okay.
17 there, if you want, that's where you review it.
This is,
Usually, in board meetings, usually the protocol is that if a board member wants to change a policy, you guys didn't have opportunity to do this, but usually you would have already submitted your proposed revisions to the superintendent or to the president, so it could be in the meeting, so we could see it together. Tonight's a little weird because you just barely saw it now. But
okay. On EL 14, what are we on, EL 14? Can we go to EL 14?
We can go back to EL 14
Thank
if
you.
you'd like, yes.
Under 3, when you use the term stakeholders, are you intending to mean students? What's your definition of stakeholders? Sometimes the board has its own language, and it's not always transferable to everybody else.
Students are actually customers.
Okay?
Parents would be customers as well.
Stakeholders are people that pay taxes in the district, but don't necessarily have students in the district.
So
They can be either way, but stakeholders include everyone.
I think it's a great question because I get a little confused with stake. To me, stakeholder is anyone who has a stake, right? That could be customers, that could be owners, and sometimes we probably have some policies where we have stakeholders, but maybe we need to look at these and make sure we're really being specific about customers and owners instead, because that's a terminology that we use in policy governance. That's a good point. But
And then can we put that somewhere? Here is our lingo defined for everybody else, including me.
when 3 board members agree, we can do anything.
Okay.
I believe it is already in writing somewhere, but I couldn't put my hand on it in just a few minutes. There's policy governance overviews on the website and thing that explains all of it, but we could put it somewhere else or anything like that. But I know it's somewhere.
Because we just addressed elsewhere the students portion, which now is under customers. But we specifically say in other places, students, parents, teachers, administrators, other staff.
So is your question to the consistency of how our policies are written and using the same language?
I guess so, yes.
Do you have an example of a policy that says that? Besides students comes first, because that's a little bit different than this.
No, I do not have specifics. Just in the questions that we had earlier about, are we making sure that that students have an input in the curriculum, because it was brought up by student board members. What are their titles? Whatever.
Student reps.
Thank you. That they had been frustrated with it not being addressed in the past, or they were not aware that that was, and a staff, an administrator has also said, I wasn't aware that that was an issue. So I think that it needs to be, that was something that was wanted, that I wasn't aware that students were supposed to have any kind of input for those kinds of things. It wasn't specifically referencing curriculum, it was referencing dress code in that case, but that administrator admitted, no, we didn't have student input.
It's EL 14 is where we were, maybe where the confusion's coming is when we talk in public and somebody says students, we'll go along with students. The actual policy itself doesn't say students. And the policy you're referencing right now is EL 4, where it says that the superintendent will not fail to involve stakeholders, customers, and advisory capacity on important issues that could impact them. That's where you're getting at, is where that came up in the high school and where we talked about it. But it doesn't say students in that policy either. It just says customers, which is, from our view, is students. But so maybe the confusion comes is when we're explaining it in a public setting, we do say customers or students and intertwine them somewhat, from my view. The policies are pretty consistent.
Well, and I would say one thing to keep in mind, Jen, this is in policy review tonight, but at any time, a board member can bring a recommended revision to a policy and say, I think we need to be more clear in this area. For instance, if you say, I don't think everyone's going to read that and know that means students, then you have the ability to say, here's what I would suggest, and if the board agrees, then we can adopt that at any time. So not just tonight.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So.
That's a great question, though, and it's a good point. So are we ready to move on, or do we want to have some proposed revisions tonight to that policy?
It sounds like the terminology, the language that you have now is current with other policies as well. I guess I just need to propose at a later date that we need to better define these things in a more friendly location where it can be seen by anyone that gets in here.
Okay. All right. we will move on to item E2, EL 17. Are there any proposed revisions to policy EL 17?
I have a question on EL 17.
Do you have a proposed revision? Jen?
Okay, so it keeps talking about the procedures, but it never talks about the implementation of those procedures. And I know that the implementation is not us, it's him, but don't we want to specifically say, so under 4, it talks about establishing procedures in order to get in, but it doesn't say and implement that. So I think we need to address and enroll under 4. Or do you think because it addresses enrollment in 5 that we don't need that? Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I'm just trying to figure out, are you proposing a revision?
Sure. I don't
Okay.
know yet.
So what I would say, Jen, is this is your first night in
Right.
policy review. These can be, you can bring these up if you make a request to put places in a policy review because you have some revisions. You can do that anytime. Just all you have to do is ask me. And then you will say, here's my revision, and then we'll be able to have discussion around why you're recommending that. And then we'll know specifically, we can look at what you're asking us to approve, and then have discussions around that.
What
Might
works,
make it a
what
little
works
easier.
really well for me as a board member is if you, and I don't know, what we kind of came to a consensus at the time that this is what we like to do. If you have suggested improvements or changes that you can get a copy of this template from Rob or Chris, and then make your changes in red. I don't know if you want to do that in Word or not, but you can make it so your
Right,
changes
I've seen
show up
this.
so it lines it out, puts it in red, and then they can put them side by side. So then me as a board member, I can easily tell without you trying to explain,
Right.
here's what I want to change or here's what I don't like. It's easier for me to say, if you have it side by side and says, here's what I want to add, and then you can say, here's what I want to add and here's why, then it facilitates a little bit smoother discussion.
Okay, so do not bring up, I'm frustrated with this wording. Bring up, I want to change it to this, then we have the
And here's-
discussion,
and
is
here's
what
why.
you're
Yeah.
saying. Okay?
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, because a lot of times this is what happens. Yeah, that's a good point. That was written kind of down before. That makes more sense. Let's approve it. That's all it takes sometimes. We went through all of them and we changed the therefore the superintendent shall not cause or allow in every EL so that they were just
I
the same
remember
same verbiage.
Okay.
So yeah, feel free to do that. And Tony was saying you could get it from anybody. You can actually just download it right off of the
Right.
board docs as well and make those changes side by side if you want.
Okay.
Sometimes it's kind of difficult to do that because you have to
PDF
modify
to-
it.
Yep. If
You have to
convert
have, I have
PDF
the
to
software
Word-
to do
Word.
that, but if you don't have the software,
I don't either, so I won't be able to help you with that either.
Go to Tony's and make that change.
There you
Right.
go. Was there anything else on that, Jen?
I will have to work on wording at another time and
Okay.
bring it up at a later date.
All right. So moving on to item E3, ends 2. Any recommended revisions to ends 2? I'm going to remind the board and probably inform a couple new board members that ends 1, 2, and 3, we just went through a pretty lengthy process with staff and with a consultant and reworded these and made them very concise. So those have gone through a lot of changes over a few years. Okay, item E4, GP13. Any recommended revisions to item GP13?
I'm going to break my own rule because I should have had this in writing.
Oh,
But
no.
right where it says, I know exactly what I think it should say. But we discussed it when we reviewed this policy, that this policy is written in a way, really the president is doing these things, and then we're monitoring this policy based on assumptions. And so I think what would help is at the very end of the top statement, where there's a comma and then it says the board may seek remedy by the following process. I think that should say the board president, because all those items are conversations that the president would have. Even down to number 5, the declaration of vacancy, I believe, would come from the president. Would say, this board member has missed this many meetings. I need to ask the board for a vacancy of a seat.
So Tony, just to be devil's advocate, what if a board member was placed on a committee through consensus of the board? Is it really the board president's, do they have the power to remove a member from a committee that was placed there by the consensus of the rest of the board?
Where are you seeing
Number
the committee?
3, just for instance. You're saying the board
offending
member
is a board member. I don't think that references other members of the committee.
the board president removes an offending member from a committee when they were placed on that committee by consensus of the rest of the board. Does the board president have the power to do that?
Yes, I think so. And my other concern about, what if it's the board president that's the problem? If it says board president, you know, maybe it should say board president or vice president. I've talked to other boards that their president is the problem.
Let's hope it's not this time.
Not here. So that would be my own, I agree with what you're saying.
The public censure would come as in a board meeting from the board as a whole anyway. But
What if it's the
what does public censure look like?
I think there needs to be more time to
more time to think about it.
Consider
But
this.
definitely, we had discussed it in the last board meeting, and so I was thinking of ways that we could make it more clear.
I felt like the issue was that it was difficult to find compliance when we never ran into it. So how do we say in compliance or out of compliance when it hasn't come up?
Is
That
there
was
a
part of the
definition
issue.
of non-attendance?
Yeah, it's in accordance with the law. There's an RCW that I believe says if a board member has either 3 or 4
row.
unexcused absences in a row.
Oh, in a row. Okay.
And unexcused. It's not
Okay.
4 absences in a row. It's
Okay.
4 times when the president had no idea that
Okay.
the board member wasn't going to be
All
here
right.
for.
So there is a definition of that elsewhere, so
It's
we're
an
just following
RCW.
that.
And
Okay.
that's why it says in accordance with the law.
Right.
Of the law. Public censure, I think, is a vote of the board. It's never happened since I've been on the school board.
That they can't talk? That what?
A public censure?
Yeah.
It's
Reprimand.
basically publicly reprimanding that board member and saying that that board member is out of line.
Has that happened at a city council?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
I know it's happened in board meetings, and you could go look at other districts' board meetings. It's just never happened in this district.
Okay.
So do we want to wait on this? And
I'm fine with waiting. I just
Also,
wanted to
just
have the
bring it-
discussion.
So again, at any time, if a board member wants to reword something, just let me know so that I can make sure it's on the following agenda.
And we evaluate policies, GPs, ELs at every board meeting or just the first ones of the month, typically?
We follow the calendar.
Okay.
But we can bring
Could go at any
anything
of
into
them.
policy review at any time. We
Okay.
just try to follow the calendar so that we're not getting
Right.
so much at once.
Right. Right.
But anytime you can ask the president to ask an item,
Okay.
to have an item added.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay. There is no need for executive session tonight. All right, so we'll move on to item G1, upcoming events. So there's a few things here. We just spoke about this in length. Tomorrow night, board dinner and meeting with community leaders and dignitaries. That's from 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock at the golf course. Tomorrow, is that correct? We usually get them the following Monday, don't we, Tony?
It should be the following Monday.
Yeah, I think that,
It's because the board meeting's the 20th, huh?
Oh,
gotcha. Okay, so tomorrow normally the next following Monday is when we get the Survey Monkeys for the policies that we're just in the we got monitoring reports for. But it will be tomorrow, we'll be look in your email for surveys for EL2, EL3, BSRs 1, 2, 3, and 4. We don't have a monitoring report for it because we're monitoring ourselves on that. All right? So I don't know how you guys are going to feel about doing that. You might not feel comfortable answering that. That's up to you. But we're monitoring ourselves and our relationship with the superintendent on those BSRs. Typically then when you do the survey, you'll have a chance to look through the monitoring reports that were provided to us by Dr. Hurst and then determine compliance based on those reports. Also on direct inspection, if you've had an opportunity to inspect any things that are within those ELs. Okay? December 15th is when they're due. So they're asked they have them back by the 15th so they can have them prepared for the next meeting. December 20th would be our next meeting then, and it'll be a 12 o'clock meeting. Really the purpose of that meeting, we'll quickly go over these policies, but it's primarily to sign payroll so that our staff can get paid for December. It's a very short meeting typically, and I'm assuming we'll have lunch. Okay? Lunch meeting. So then December 10th, January 10th, thank you. That is the registration deadline for the NSBA conference in San Antonio. That is April 7th through the 19th. Now, that's the early registration deadline, which gets us a better rate. So if you are interested in going, please let me know. And then, actually, in this case, so whenever it's out-of-state travel, you're supposed to get approval from the president. I'm approving everyone if they want to go to this conference. So skip me and go right to Dr. Hurst's office to make sure that you're getting registered for that if you are able to go and would like to go to that. All right?
Do you have a problem with oysters?
No, not at all.
Just checking, just checking.
Along those lines, I want to ask, did we get then hotel reservations? Because we talked about that last board meeting.
So for the January 10th NSBA conference, what we need to do first is know who of the board members will be attending. Then we need to register you, and once we get the confirmation of the registration, then you can go in and get rooms.
That's right. They don't let you do it without registering. I remember that from the last time.
I am planning on attending. You can go ahead and register me. I've blocked those dates out.
Same.
I am as well. There's like 2 hotels available, I think, when I looked last night. So we're going to have some slim pickings. It's going to be good exercise, though.
Dr. Hurst, I would, with the president's opinion, like to arrange my own flights, and then I'll just request reimbursement.
Same for me.
Say, I've got to think. I'm going to be in Washington D.C. 2 weeks before this, so I got to take a close look at my timing. So.
And Mike, you need more time to decide, or are you a no, or yes? Okay, great. Okay, so again, that'll be in April. We'll just have to make sure we're making an announcement that there will be a quorum at that before that time comes. And then I think that Tony just wanted to make sure everyone knew that the next annual Policy Governance Conference will be June 21st through 23rd, and that will be in Savannah, Georgia. And there's a link there if you'd like to learn more about that. We just attended the last Policy Governance Annual Conference this last year. There was a few of us, and it was really good. You weren't there with a bunch of school boards. There was a couple school boards, but Policy Governance is done through many different types of businesses, nonprofits, and so to get different perspectives of how they govern through policy was interesting.
So is that something you're thinking on a yearly basis that is worthwhile, or for those that like every other?
I think it's up to whatever that individual feels they need and would like to get for training.
Okay.
Again, it's out of state, so if someone is interested in going, just make sure that there's a request for approval on that. And I don't see where there would not be a request for approval unless it looked like it was getting a little out of hand with the travel. I would say that's the only time that I could see that happen. So. Okay. Any other events that maybe is not mentioned here
The only
It's
one,
coming
but
up
we
soon.
discussed it tonight, was January 12th, but it'll come up again. The meeting with the parent PTA meetings is coming up, special meeting,
Yeah, and I guess
and that'll come up in their next meeting. I'm
also
sure.
the fact that we're having a forum before
Yeah,
the
and a forum.
January 8th board meeting, 6 o'clock forum. Okay. And now if you click on the board self-assessment of meeting and click on that link, you'll have the opportunity to fill that out, and then we'll go over the results. What's today? Thank you. Okay. We all in, or just, I just have 4 right now?
I'm just finishing up.
Okay. Sorry, Ken. Okay, so we'll go through item 1 at a time. The agenda was well planned to focus on the real work of the board. The weighted average was 4.8. 4 were commendable, 1 was good. The board followed its agenda and did not get sidetracked. We had 2 satisfactory, 1 good, 2 commendable. That was a broad range. The board's deliberations and decision-making processes were public. That was commendable by all. Participation was balanced. All participated, no one dominated. 2 said that was satisfactory. 3 said that was good. Obviously, that's something that we can improve on. And that's agreed on by all, I think. Members listened attentively, avoiding side conversations. 1 said good, 4 said commendable on that. Board actions occur at the policy level rather than at the operational level. 4 yes, 1 no. The board reviews policy about each topic before discussing that issue. 3 3 said yes, 2 said no. In writing additional policies, the board starts with a broad statement and becomes more detailed in a logical and disciplined manner. 1 said yes, 4 said that was not applicable. Typically, one of the things to know is when we don't write a new policy, which is pretty rare that we write a new policy, then it doesn't apply. So if a new policy is being written, that's the only time that that one really is going to be a yes or a no. The board chair helps the board efficiently conduct its meeting. Yes by all. You guys were nice because I'm late. The board supports the superintendent in any reasonable interpretation of its policies, and that was yes for all 5.
There was some comments. Did they not show up?
Yeah. Oh, okay. It was at the top. Oh, is that one of the ones where you got to scroll to one side?
I can see it there now.
Let's see.
I don't know how I see it on my Chromebook, but I can see it on the screen.
You can't see it on your Chromebook?
No,
Or
but
you
I can
don't
see
know
it
if
on
you
the
can.
screen.
Okay. A little rough, as can be expected with the new board. Okay, that was the only comment? There's another one, okay. And it is always a challenge to stay focused on policy rather than operation, but we should continue to strive to do that. Okay, weighted average was a 4.0, which I think for the first meeting of a largely new board, that's pretty good. Okay. I have a request, Dr. Hurst, for this survey in the future. I think we'll probably all agree on the date and the number of people that are here, so we probably could skip that part. And maybe...
I tried to change the date and it didn't work, so apparently it doesn't really matter what you put there.
Oh.
Just to see.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that the survey itself speaks to how many were here, because if you had 4 answer, then 4 were here, right? So we could probably leave that out. And the date's probably somewhere on there, but I don't know for sure. Okay. Then I won't ask every time, what's today? What's the date? Okay.
I think that self-assessment date at the top had nothing to do with what we put in. I think it just is there, but at the very top.
Does it come out in the final report? Okay. So there are no other items on our agenda, and I will accept a motion to adjourn. Been a motion by Director Garza to adjourn the meeting. Second by Director Stevenson. The meeting is adjourned at 9:15.